YouTube is running an experiment, or YouTube ran an experiment where they put 4K video behind a paywall. Can you believe it? They put 4K video behind a paywall. I am going to preface this entire story by pointing out this is way out of my wheelhouse for a multitude of reasons. First, I don't produce 4K content. I don't have the highest quality computer. It is 5 years old at this point. It can't really handle 4K too well. Also, my SD cards are 64 gigs. That seems like a lot. It is a lot. For 1080p video, for 1080p footage, that's more than fine. I can get 4 hours of footage on that SD card. 4 hours and 19 minutes, I think. And for these podcasts, I record 1.5 hours most of the time. And that is fine. I have 2 cameras, so I will have 2 SD cards. If I was doing 4K footage, the amount I could capture on that SD card drops to 1 hour. It's 4 times the data. 1 hour on my SD card, so I would need to spend a lot of money getting new SD cards that are higher capacity. Or I would need to have 4 SD cards for a talking head podcast. I don't think that level of resolution is necessary. Also, I do the podcasted reviews 1080p. Don't really see much reason to go to 4K. I'm sure some people would like it. Most people wouldn't care. We'll get into that later. Then for watches, I could understand that because you're doing macro shots and you are really looking at the minutia of a watch. You are looking at it under a microscope. For watch content, I understand it. If you're looking that closely at watches, chances are you have a bit more disposable income. You're probably going to have premium. This will not affect you. If you're spending $20,000 on a watch, pay the $12 for premium so you can get the 4K. I don't think that's unreasonable. That's why I am still using 1080p 30 FPS with a little bit of a tangent. I don't think this really matters that much. I don't think this is going to impact many people. I don't think many people are going to notice this. As I mentioned, this is out of my wheelhouse, so I wanted to get an expert's opinion. So I went ahead and watched the WAN show on Linus Tech Tips. The reason I went to them to see what they were saying. They have been producing 4K, maybe even 8K video for at least 5 years at this point, maybe longer, maybe 10 years. They've been doing 4K. So they would be the ones to go to see what their take is on 4K footage, putting 4K footage behind a paywall. And on top of just producing it, they are distributing 4K footage because they started their own video platform, Floatplane. And the reason they did that was to offer higher quality video and higher quality audio. They ran a poll, they talked to the people who use their platform. I don't know how they got this information. They found out one person on the entire platform cares about the better video and the better audio. Nobody else cared. But on top of that, they shared a stat from a YouTube study that was run, and this indicates that even fewer people actually care about 4K footage. The way that YouTube ran this experiment was they would automatically drop the quality of a video, and not just a little bit, by a lot. If you were watching 4K, they would drop it to 480p. 1080p down to 480p, something like that. The study found that only 1.5% of people actually clicked the gear icon and changed it back to 4K or a higher resolution. 1.5% of people actually changed it back. That really puts things into perspective. How much people actually care about it. Or maybe not how much people care about it, but how many people actually notice the difference or are concerned with the difference from 4K to 1080 or 4K to 480. Because a lot of the times you don't need that level of resolution. As long as the audio isn't degraded, my spoken word talking head video is fine in 480, in 320 or 360, whatever the heck it is. In 240, it becomes pretty much unwatchable. 480p, I don't think anybody would have any complaints watching this podcast, as long as the audio wasn't destroyed. For my review videos, same story. Unless I am doing this software walkthrough, that's where 4K really comes into play. But because I do edit in 1080p, if I am doing something, I understand if it's not going to be visible, so I will zoom in on it so that you are able to see it in 1080p. I work around that because I don't export 4K. So I understand that. You can edit around that if you know that it's not going to be available in the highest resolution, in the original resolution that you capture it in. The reason I'm saying that is when I'm capturing software I capture on my iMac, that captures 5K. I'm not going to release a 5K video, so I just zoom all the way in and focus on the things that are necessary so it can be visible at 1080p. That's beside the point. Going back to the topic at hand, something that I hadn't considered was the cost. I don't have to think about this. I don't run a video platform. But the guys over at the WAN show, they run Floatplane. They distribute video content. They disclosed that 4K video distribution comes with a significant cost increase because the data of that video file is so much more. I think it's 4 times more than 1440. Maybe it's 4 times more than 1080p. Based on my data usage on the SD cards, I think it's 4 times more than 1080p. That's a big increase. You're going to have to pay for that via bandwidth or with your bandwidth costs, and that can add up. So that is something that I hadn't considered, and that makes sense. Google and YouTube are companies. They don't exist to just distribute stuff or put stuff out of the goodness of their heart. They have no heart. They're a soulless corporation. If a product becomes not profitable, they're going to kill it. So the option is allow them to try to make it profitable. If you like 4K video on YouTube, if you like 8K video on YouTube, wouldn't you rather them maintain the capability of distributing 4K and 8K content so that if you really want it, if there is a benefit, you can still have access to it, as opposed to them saying, you know what, 4K, 8K, not profitable, let's just completely cut it off. Let's not allow that at all. That's one way they could have gone. And I don't think anybody could really argue if it wasn't profitable, if it was just a money pit that they were throwing money into, saying, we've always had it, we need to always have it in the future. Oh well, let's just burn money. No, they're going to say, let's make it profitable or kill the product. That's how it works. Something that I would like to see data on, though, because I think this would be very interesting. A lot of the people that I have encountered online who talk about high-end monitors that are 4K, high refresh rate, 8K monitors, just the best monitors out there, those are the people who consume 4K content and higher. Those are also the people who I see talking about the best ad blockers, how to implement ad blockers. Oh, you need to use an ad blocker. So they are consuming the highest cost version of the content on YouTube while eliminating any way for YouTube to earn money from those views. So maybe that's why 4K content is going behind a paywall. Because the people consuming 4K content are the more tech-savvy people, and the more tech-savvy people are going to be more likely to be able to implement and install and set up an ad blocker, which eliminates them as somebody who earns YouTube any money to pay for the distribution of that content. Something to think about. I would love to see data on that. It would be impossible to get, though. So to summarize my thoughts here, for me as a content creator, this has zero impact because I still produce 1080p 30 FPS. As a viewer, I consume at 1080p. Very rarely have I gone to 1440 or even 4K. And based on the YouTube study, where only 1.5% actually went to change it from 480p back up to 4K or 1440 or 1080p, seems like a lot of people will not be caring about it. It makes sense if the 4K video distribution was losing them money, it makes sense for them to try to make it profitable so that they can continue to offer that as a service. Makes sense to me. I understand why a lot of people will be angry about it because you had it as an option, now you don't. Never fun. That's never fun. But if putting 4K or 8K video behind a paywall allows them to continue to offer the distribution of that quality of video as a service, it may suck, but it makes sense because according to the WAN show, according to Luke, was it, who does a lot of the logistics for Floatplane, I guess, seems to be quite cost intensive to distribute that type of video. And when pushed and asked, what would your cutoff be where you just walk away from YouTube where they limit the video? I think he said 480p, 720p. He would still watch it because the content on YouTube has so much value. That's where the good content is, or not all the good content, but people go to YouTube for the content, not for the video quality. If the quality content went off of YouTube, then that's a different story. There's currently no competition to YouTube. I will link the WAN show video discussing this. It's the first 40 minutes of the podcast. Very interesting discussion. I look forward to seeing the entire dedicated video about it because that's what they do. They produce 4K, 8K, maybe 8K. I know they produce 4K video on Linus Tech Tips. I'll be curious to see how they approach it. I think they're going to say it may not be fun, but it makes sense because of the cost associated with hosting and distributing that quality of video. And I'll also link in Ars Technica article if you want to check that out.